Karen always believed she could control the entire neighborhood with her self-made rules and fake authority, but the day she knocked on our door, demanding that my wife join her so-called HOA, she made a mistake she would never forget, because my wife wasn't just any homeowner, she was the sheriff, and Karen had no idea who she was about to challenge the next morning. Karen returned with printed papers claiming they were official HOA membership forms. She taped one to our door with a warning that non-compliance would result in fines and restrictions. My wife calmly removed the paper, folded it, and placed it on the counter. She had seen fake notices before in her career as a sheriff and recognized immediately that it had no legal authority. Later that afternoon, Karen began knocking on neighbors' doors, loudly announcing that we were troublemakers who refused to cooperate. She even stood in the street, pointing at our home, telling others that she had already called the police to deal with us. What she didn't know was that when the patrol car finally arrived, the officer stepping out was the same person she was trying to intimidate. My wife Karen rushed toward the patrol car, waving her arms and loudly accusing us of breaking community laws. She demanded that the officer issue fines and force us to join her HOA. But as she kept ranting, my wife stepped forward, showed her badge and said, "I am the sheriff for this county." Karen froze. The neighbors watching from their porches gasped. Some even started recording. Karen tried to laugh nervously, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, but my wife's tone stayed calm and firm. "There is no legal HOA here," she said, "and what you are doing is harassment and possibly fraud." The other officer nodded and asked Karen to provide proof of her authority. When she couldn't, the neighbors began speaking up, sharing their own experiences of being threatened by her with fake fees and bogus rules. Karen's face turned pale as one neighbor admitted they had paid her money every month, fearing their car would be towed. Another said she had threatened to block access to the community park if they didn't follow her orders. The officer kept taking notes, while my wife asked Karen why she felt entitled to create her own laws and demand money from people. She didn't answer, she just looked down, trying to avoid the stares from everyone around us. Have you ever seen someone so determined to control others that they forget what's actually legal and what's not? And what would you do if a person like Karen came to your door, demanding money for rules that don't even exist? Karen tried to defend herself, saying she was only trying to keep the neighborhood safe, but my wife told her safety doesn't come from threats or fake rules, it comes from people trusting each other. The officer then warned Karen that continuing this behavior could lead to serious charges like fraud and harassment. Karen's voice cracked as she insisted she had done nothing wrong, yet the neighbors no longer seemed afraid. Some of them even stepped closer, telling Karen to stop bothering everyone. One elderly man said she had knocked on his door late at night demanding payment for street maintenance that the city actually provided for free. My wife asked Karen, "Do you realize how many people you have scared and taken money from, and do you think anyone will trust you again after this?" Karen's shoulders slumped as the officer finished taking statements from the neighbors. Each of them described in detail how she had been knocking on doors, demanding money for fake services, threatening to tow vehicles, and even leaving handwritten warnings that made families anxious. My wife stayed calm but firm, telling Karen that this had to end. Now the officer issued her an official notice, warning her to stop all contact with the residents unless it was peaceful and legal. Karen didn't argue this time. She simply nodded her head and walked away quietly. Over the next week, the street felt different. Lighter neighbors started talking to one another more freely. Children played outside without parents worrying about sudden confrontations. One evening, as we were sitting on our porch, an elderly neighbor came over and said thank you for standing up to her. We were all too scared to do it ourselves. Have you ever seen how quickly people unite when someone finally confronts the person everyone feared? What do you think makes someone like Karen feel powerful enough to treat an entire neighborhood that way? Karen did not disappear entirely. A few days later, she showed up again, but this time she was quieter, more careful. She knocked gently on doors, asking if she could speak to people without any papers or threats. My wife watched from our window and said she might finally understand. She cannot bully people forever, but we need to stay alert. That evening, Karen came to our house. She looked nervous and asked if there was a way to avoid legal trouble. She said she never meant to scare anyone. She just wanted to organize things better. My wife told her organizing a community is good, but pretending to have authority and taking money is not leadership, it is intimidation. Karen listened but didn't respond. She turned and walked away, leaving the street silent again. Over the following weeks, no fake notices appeared, no angry shouting was heard, and slowly the neighborhood became more peaceful. One afternoon, the officer who had handled the earlier incident stopped by to tell us that Karen had agreed to attend a mediation program and return any money she had collected. Some neighbors were surprised, others relieved, but everyone seemed ready to move on. Have you ever seen someone completely changed their behavior after finally being forced to face consequences. Karen attended the mediation sessions quietly, and though she never fully apologized to anyone, her behavior shifted. Noticeably, she stopped demanding control and instead joined a legitimate volunteer group that organized neighborhood cleanups and park events. Over time, the same people she had once intimidated began to see her sweeping sidewalks, picking up trash, and staying mostly silent. My wife noticed the difference, but she also kept a watchful eye. Just in case. One evening, during a community gathering, Karen walked past us without a word but gave a small nod, almost like a truce. Neighbors whispered to each other that they never thought they would see her act this way, and for the first time in months, the street felt completely calm. No threats, no fake rules, no drama, just people enjoying their homes and talking freely. And that's how the woman who once tried to control everyone learned that real authority doesn't come from fear, it comes from respect and trust. Months after Karen's so-called transformation, the neighborhood had settled into a new normal, but change is rarely simple. One rainy evening, we noticed unfamiliar cars slowly driving through our streets, stopping near several houses, including ours. At first it seemed harmless, but then people began finding anonymous notes taped to their mailboxes, demanding they pay late community dues or risk losing access to shared areas. My wife immediately recognized the tactic. It was different paper, different handwriting, but the same kind of scam. She called a quick meeting with neighbors and asked if anyone had seen Karen recently. Some said they hadn't, while others admitted they'd seen her speaking with a couple of strangers near the edge of the neighborhood. Could Karen have slipped back to her old ways, or was someone else trying to pick up where she left off? Would you confront those strangers directly or gather evidence quietly before taking action? Some neighbors wanted to confront the strangers immediately, but my wife advised patience. She knew from experience that rushing in without proof could backfire. Instead, she suggested installing cameras and quietly documenting every car and person coming through for a week. Soon, they discovered a pattern. The same dark SUV kept returning late at night, stopping briefly, and then leaving notes on specific homes. My wife contacted the local police department to coordinate a sting operation. One evening she waited in an unmarked car with another deputy watching as the SUV rolled in. Slowly, its headlights dimmed. The driver stepped out, wearing a hoodie, and started taping another fake notice to a mailbox. My wife flipped on her spotlight and ordered the person to stop. The hood came down, and to everyone's shock, it wasn't Karen. It was her cousin who lived 2 towns away. When questioned, he admitted Karen had told him about how easy it was to scare this neighborhood into paying fake fees. My wife now had a decision to make. Should she arrest Karen too, for orchestrating this new scheme, or focus only on the cousin who had been caught in the act? What would you do in her place? Karen's cousin was taken into custody and questioned. He admitted that she had encouraged him to try collecting money, but she had not directly participated in placing the new fake notices. My wife decided to pursue charges against him, while issuing Karen a strict legal warning, making it clear that if her name appeared in any similar scheme again, she would face serious consequences. The neighborhood gathered later to thank my wife and to plan ways to prevent future scams. Neighbors exchanged phone numbers, set up a watch group, and installed better lighting at the entrances. Over the following months, peace gradually returned, and Karen kept her distance. She continued doing volunteer work, but never tried to impose control again. The street transformed from a place of fear to one of cooperation and trust, showing everyone that even the most persistent troublemaker can be stopped when a community stands together.